Hi, my name is Zio, and I'm a tabletop publisher from Singapore. We have been publishing games since 2013, and our games can be found in major retail store, boardgame cafe, and we also have helped individuals, corporations, and government agencies to publish their own educational and their own brand engagement games to engage people. So with a wealth of experience under my belt, I'm here today to teach you how do you design a tabletop game. So many people thought that tabletop games are just card and board games, but that might not be true. Tabletop games, by definition, is a game that can be played on, as long as it's on a tabletop. It can be a toy, it can be a piece of paper. Okay, so first thing that we look at is, of course, card games. So we have some of the favorite card games over here, like Monopoly Deal, poker cards, Uno. We also have board games. So things favorite like something like Monopoly, and of course one of the old tradition favorite, chess, which is a board game has been around for thousands of years. Okay, and we have role-playing tabletop games. In this game, you get to immerse yourself in a world whereby you need to literally play the character and try to take out and gain loot, take out boss characters, and enjoy the adventure. Okay, so we have also dice games over here. Dice games is very popular these days. So in today, dice game is a lot more elaborate. Some of the most famous dice game are from like Marble Dice Master, and you have games, the dice game for learning about education for kids to help them learn about arithmetic. Next, we have pen and paper games. These games typically can be played on a piece of paper, and one of the most classic example is tic-tac-toe. Okay, and then we have the more tactile games, what we call dexterity games. So these games require a certain level of skills and of course a stable hand. We have things like pick up sticks, which is a very traditional childhood games in Singapore, and of course we have board game cafe favorites Jenga. The other type of tabletop games are made of tiles. So these are what we call tile-based games. So some of the great examples of tile-based games are games like Mahjong and Scrabbles. So they typically involve nice blocking tiles which you can hold, throw, and you can lay down. Okay, so among all these genre of games, which type is your favorite game? The reason why I'm asking you this is because your favorite game is typically the first game that you design based on. Okay, so when you design a game, it's always easier to design a game based on your favorite game rather than you try to go do a new one. So the idea of a game development is always building on our past game and we try to make it better. So that is how literally innovation and design work. So by using a favorite game of a past where you have been playing it, you have been enjoying it, you will be asking this question: can I make this game better? How can I make this game more fun? And one of the reasons why the first game that you design should be your favorite game, because you are familiar with how it makes you feel, how it works, and how it looks. So how do you go about making a board game? So the first step to go about is you need to consider three aspects of the game. First aspect is player experience. Okay, how do you feel when you play the game? Okay, the second part is we talk about game mechanics. How does the game works? What are the rules? And how do you actually win the game? Last part is the game presentation and artwork. Okay, so a game basically allows you to feel four main emotions. Okay, a good game will make you feel smart. Okay, so it also make you feel curious, whether you're curious about delving into the game and exploring more about the game. Does it make you feel excited about the game and you're playing the game? Things flying over the place, dice rolling, and you are excited at what's going to happen next. You feel very happy, you are trembling. How will you create this kind of excitement in the tabletop game? And lastly, you feel connected. Okay, what do you mean by connected? Connected means that you feel a relationship with your friends. So there are games that has been designed to create different kind of emotions over here. For smart, you have this game called Scrabble. For curiosity, you have Dungeons and Dragons. For excitement, you have games like Marvel Dice Hero, where you get to throw dice. And you have Pandemic, a cooperative game in a race to save the world from a virus, where you can make people feel connected. So there are negative emotions that we want to avoid while doing game design.
The first one is a feeling of loss, and this often comes about when rules are too complex for the target audience, or the rules are written badly that people have no idea how to proceed in the game. And we have boredom, whereby players are unable to get excitement for the game, where the game is just too long, or they wait too long a time before their turn comes, or the things they do are simply just uninteresting to them. The third emotion we have is frustration. This come about when people are unable to complete the game, like rules contradict each other, or they are not sure what they can do, and when luck goes against them. Lastly, we have this feeling of fear, whereby you feel that people have been ganging up you in a game, and that comes in a games whereby it's very competitive, and they do not create mechanics to spread the targeting around, and everybody just target one player. Okay, so try to avoid all these 4 different negative mechanics, and when you're doing game testing, your players do feedback that they are either lost, bored, frustrated, or fear, then it's time to relook at all this mechanic and to see how you can change it for the better.
So in this case, what kind of experience do we want to create for our players? What do you want your players to learn? Do you want them to learn about e-commerce scam, love scam, phishing scam? After they finish playing a game, they feel that I learned something, I feel smart. Okay, so that's a positive emotion. Or you want them to feel a connection among the other players, like having let's say a cooperative game, people working together to try to combat scam. Or you have something like a Cluedo kind of game, or detective game, where you try to find the scammers. You go towards trying to find the scammers. You open the door, you explore, you look for clues, and you are curious. Okay, can you create a game like that? How do you build a game to achieve all the above, like what you want the people to learn? How do you make them feel smart, curious, excited? How do you get them into the game? So this is where the game team comes in. It's like, what is the team that you want to create? Okay, so what is a game team? Okay, a game team is basically how do you create a world. Okay, so one of the reasons why people like to play games is because it helps them escape into a new world whereby they don't need to deal with real world. So it's a form of escapism. Okay, so how do you create a team? Okay, so what kind of games can you create a team? So you will see behind me there is different kind of tabletop game with different teams. So the first one we have is this game called Race for Galaxy. Do you want to create a game about science, aliens, maybe space scam? Aliens scamming people for money in the space, or trying to scam for your spaceship. Okay, this game called Race for Galaxy. How do you create an interesting team in this case? Because one of the objectives of this workshop is to create an anti-scam message, or anti-scam educational message to the person playing this game. Okay, so can you combine an interesting team with an anti-scam message and create a new team? So for example, you have a robot, and the robot creates scam calls. Maybe you have a game about fighting against robots in the future, making scam calls. Well, maybe something like that. So it is up to your imaginations. You can go sci-fi, you can go nature, you can go fantasy, you can go cowboy. So once you have more or less determined what is the game that you want to create, fight against robot making scam calls, what can be a game title that represent this game genre? Robo scams, attack of a scam bot pandemic. Okay, so these are some of the ideas. So you must remember that your title must be able to represent what your gameplay is like, so that people can understand immediately when they look at your title. Oh, this is a game about scamming and robots. Okay, I am interested in robots. Scamming sounds interesting. Let me take a look at the game. Okay, that's where people want to pick up your game, and they started to get invested into your game. Okay, so how do you gain more inspiration on how do you find game themes or game ideas? Okay, the first thing to do is to play more card and board games. Okay, that is very important. Okay, because when you play other people's game, you realize that how they come up with the theme, how they design the mechanics, how they design the artwork to explore the theme that they are trying to do. That will help you increase your amount of experience, and they will basically help you design a better game. Okay, so also about watching and reading about fiction. Okay, in order to have a good creative mind, it's important to watch show to find out what are some of the ideas. Okay, the next method is of course watching game reviews on YouTube. So there's a lot of games out there. You may not have time to go out to a cafe, or you may not have a chance to even buy the game because some of these games are maybe not sold in Singapore, and you want to find out how this game is being played. So YouTube is your best friend. And lastly, playing a digital game. So in the game design course, one of the basic foundation in designing a digital game is firstly to design a board game. Okay, so the board game is often a first iteration of the next step to a digital game. So before we have all this thing like Final Fantasy, which is a Japanese role-playing game, they have the pen and paper role-playing game, and from there they evolve into a digital format. Okay, so game mechanics. We have just now explored about creating a positive or negative game experience. We talk about how do you come up with a game idea and a game theme. Now we need to put in the structure and the rules in how do you actually play the game. So what is a game mechanic? A game mechanic basically defines how the game is going to play, how the players are going to play it, and what are the components needed, and what's the victory condition. What are the components that make up game mechanics? Firstly, we look at the number of players that's required to play a game. Is it a 2-player game, or is it a 6-player, or is it a party game that has 10 people? What is the period of the gameplay? Is it a short game like 15 minutes, or is it a 1-hour gameplay? How difficult is the game, and what is the age group that it is suitable for? What are some of the components of the game? Is it only cards only, or there's boards and there are dice and tokens involved? How do you set up the game? What do the players do during each turn? How do the game end, and how do you determine the winner? Okay, so how do you basically design a game? So if you look at the whole game mechanics, the initial feel is that, wow, this seems like a lot of things that I need to decide. Okay, where do we start off? Okay, back to the initial idea that concept that I shared with you guys is that, remember, design based on your favorite game. It's a fun game and the game works. So by building onto it, it is harder to make mistakes other than to build a game from bottom up when you have very little experience in building games. At this stage, this is the part where you are looking to make your earliest version of a prototype of your game. So at the start, you do not need too complex tools. You just need pen, paper, scissors, draw out the cards, draw out the board on a piece of paper, and then cut them out. If you want something more fanciful, you can consider using PowerPoint and design the game on PowerPoint and using a printer to print them out. There are some components you may not be able to create using pen and paper. In this case, you can source components from old board games. You can get things like dice, plastic tokens, wooden meeples, or even paper money if that's needed as part of your game. One very clever way to create components is making use of Lego blocks. So if you need like customized people to have, let's say, a cowboy, you can look for a cowboy Lego man. And if you need to create houses, you can just make use of a Lego block to represent a house. So these are very simple ways of creating a prototype design, and you do not want to spend too much time and effort or too much money on this part of the process. Okay, after that, once you create a game, you cut it out, you now test the game with your friends. So you go through this question: is the game too long? Is the game too short? Is the game boring? Or you're stuck at a certain juncture that, I played this game and I'm stuck, it cannot move on, so the game has a problem. Is the game too difficult to understand? What are the positive game experience? Remember just now I'm talking about curiosity, if you're smart, if you're excited. And what are the negative game experience? Are people bored? Is the game too long? Are people frustrated? Okay, you ask your friend this thing. The game design process goes on and on in this thing where you go repeat back, and after you do an evaluation, you change your game, you redo again. So typically in the game design phase, this is typically the longest phase. How do you decide you're going to stop testing? Okay, you basically decide whether you want to continue testing or not is when you feel that everything works. Okay, Okay, so when the game is completed, played to completion, when you can actually reach the end. Sometimes you play a game halfway through, you just know that you cannot complete, the rules are broken. So this is what we call a broken game. You cannot complete the game. Okay, so the game is completed. You know that when the game can be played to completion, and there is more positive experience than negative experience. So when people don't like the game, the first thing they say that, what I don't like the game, then they talk about what they like the game. So when they start to talk about, I like the game and this is what I like, and maybe this part you can improve on it, you know that your game is more or less 80 to 90% complete. Okay, so once you are done with the game mechanics and people feel that the game is ready, this is the time where you start to beautify your game. That's where you start to look at game art. Why is game art important? So game mechanics make the game fun, game art makes the person interested in the game. How do you stand out with a table of different games and you stand out and get the people to get interested in your game? Okay, so game art is basically divided into two separate categories. The first part is illustration, the second part is graphic design. Okay, what's the difference? Let me elaborate. Illustration is basically the central art of the card or a box that tells a story. So if you look at this Pokemon card, the game illustration is basically Pikachu in the center emitting electricity. And what is graphic design? Graphic design is the presentation, how the illustration is being presented. So you see over there you have the name of Pikachu over there in yellow and black font, and then you have a lightning, that is the cost of playing the card, and you have at the bottom with all the different game effects, okay, with the different skill like thunderbolt, what kind of damage it does, how much resource you need in order to cast this effect. So having a good illustration but having a lousy graphic design that doesn't help people understand how the card works. Where do you look for the cards? Is it intuitive to know that I look at the card, this is the casting cost to summon Pikachu, and when after I summon I need to make Pikachu do thunderbolt? How do I do it? Okay, so how do you actually do the illustration? So when you first do illustration, you first start with a concept, okay, what we call a concept sketch, whereby you try to sketch out what you are trying to draw, and then you start the sketching to define it. Okay, then the next stage is the line work, where you clean up the lines around the sketch, clean up the lines to have a more defined idea how the line works, and then you start to color the game. Okay, you color the game, and that is your final product of the illustration. Okay, so these are the stages of art. Okay, so how do you obtain illustration? Okay, as we know that not all of us are born to be artists. I mean, personally, I can't really draw, so I have my artist to help me draw. But in today, there is a lot of tools to help us draw. So the first way, of course, is to get someone who can draw, a friend, a sibling, or a parent that maybe your parents are professional artists that can help you draw the art. Okay, the second way is to find pictures from the internet. Okay, what we call stock pictures. Okay, so these are typically pictures that if you spend some money, you will be able to obtain the license to use the picture to be used in your game. Okay, but in this case, because it is it's a non-commercial game, so typically you still are able to use all the graphics and all the illustration from the internet, because it's not meant for commercialization profit. Okay, so the last way, if you can't for some reason unable to find whatever that you want on the internet that represent whatever you're trying to show, there is this thing called AI art. Okay, so AI stands for artificial intelligence. So in today, you can get artificial intelligence to help you generate the kind of arts that you want. You just type in your keywords and it will generate. Okay, so what are some of the popular ways that you can generate AI arts? Okay, the first one that I would recommend is boardgame. So it's a free app that you can get on your Google iOS, and you can even do it on your PC. So you just need to decide what's the art style, type out the words that you want to do, let's say robot, scammers, that you type it in and you see what it generates. Okay, then if that's not what you want, you try another picture to see what it generates. Okay, so other things about graphic design. So now that you have the art, you want to put in some graphic design. what is the consideration you can do. So graphic design can be something that very simple, that you just have an image in the center and then the card effects at the bottom. Okay, and other things that you do is that a lot of times we do is that we typically try to have two variation when we design a card. So you have a variation one that it looks like this, yellow background, purple card effects, and or you have a white background, and then you have the words in dark. Okay, so we often design two different variations. We show to our friends, you know, which one do you like better, which one interests you more, and typically they will give a very good idea which one works for them, because sometimes you feel that, you know, both looks nice, but which one is nicer. So you tend to this is the time where you enlist your friends, your relatives to help you to figure out which one is the one that they prefer. Okay, so how can you do graphic design? Okay, so the most common way that people do is this thing called Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator. This is two tools that professional artists or graphic designers use when they are doing the graphic design. However, these tools software costs quite a bit of money, so there are other tools that you can use. So free to recommended tool that I have is this tool called Canva, which you can find online. Look for it and you can basically do almost the same thing, but it takes a while to learn about this thing, about how to do it. Another tool that you can actually use is you can use PowerPoint to try to do it. Okay, so you size your slide into the size of the card that you want, and then you just put in the illustration, you put in your thing. So using PowerPoint, you can also create something like a card. Okay, so that is some of the tools that you can use to design your cards. Okay, so lastly is to make a game. Where do you make a game in Singapore? There is two places that I recommend. One is the very famous Bras Basah complex, where it's well known for all the arty people who goes there to buy art stuff, to buy paints, to buy brushes, and of course you can get your game being made there. Another place that is nearby is this place called Sunshine Plaza. It is opposite NAFA art school, where it's just a kind of 5 minutes walk away from Bras Basah complex. So having these two places at Bugis, you will be able to figure out how much your game will cost and give a good idea how much is the budget to make the game for each component. Okay, so that is the summary of how to create a game from the initial game concept all the way to manufacturing the game. But before I end, let me give you 3 tips to avoid in making board games. What are the things you should avoid? Okay, the first tip is don't be a perfectionist. There is no such thing as a perfect game that everybody will love. Okay, liking a game is a personal choice. Sometimes this person likes a dungeon game, a fantasy game, but I just don't like science fiction because it doesn't resonate with me. So when you are doing game testing, there are bound to be people that don't like a game, whether because it's the theme or the mechanics. So you must be, but the key here is that as long as a majority of the people who plays the game enjoy your game is ready for publishing. Okay, so you do not need to wait for everybody to like and love your game. That is not possible. Okay, the next thing is iterate fast. Design, throw, and improve. Typically the first try when we design a game, it tends to not do well, or it tends to have a lot of problems. Okay, always once you have something that you identify the problem, quickly create a new prototype and test again. The faster you test, the more prototype you make, the faster you are able to complete your design. So there is no better way to improve your game than to design, throw, and improve. Okay, the last tip is to play more games. Okay, game designers get better by playing a lot of games. Okay, because when you are creating a game, it's like making a score or music, because when you see the piano, there is only that number of different tones that can play. Okay, do re mi fa sol, but it is the different combination of the do re mi fa sol that creates thousands and millions of different kind of melodies. So in the game design, it's the same concept. There are many different game mechanics. So when you only play only 1 or 2 games, your design repertoire is very limited. But however, the more game you play, the more ideas you have, the easier it is for you to take the different parts of the mechanics from different games and combine them to create a whole new game. Okay, so play a lot of games. And let's say if I don't have a lot of games and I don't want to buy new games, okay, what can I do? We can pool games among our friends and play. So you can say maybe you have 2 games, I have 2 games, and I got 3 games. Let's come together at one friend's house together, and we just play this 10 games with each other. So that's all for the entire presentation, and I hope that you learned something. Let's do a quick recap. How do you design a game? Firstly, you need to have a game objective. What is the game about? Secondly, what is the gameplay experience that people would feel, and what is the theme that gets them into the game? Thirdly, what is the rules, the game mechanics that makes them that determines how they play the game and how they win the game? Next is, how do you do the initial prototype making? Okay, where what we want to do on PowerPoint, on virtual tabletop, or want to get scraps of paper and draw it out. We do game testing, we test, we go back and design, and after we're done with everything, we feel the game is nearly complete, we start on the game art, and after that we do the prototype by heading down to Bras Basah, or we go online to look for board game manufacturers for quotes. Okay, so that is the whole method of making a board games, and I hope that you enjoy this session, and I hope to see you guys in the future, and I hope to see you with your games. So game on, and happy design games.